Hi, in this video we're going to step through some of the exercises in Unit 3.3. So the first exercise is the skyline reflection, and when this comes up we have some things to read. So if I click around here, it tells me that if I click on the lower part of the screen in the black section, there's nothing to see. But if I click anywhere above, two things happen. There is a building drawn. Now notice that it's from my mouse location, but that's not the upper left corner. It turns out you don't need to know that for this. What we're really focused on is the function calls. So there are two things that happen when you click. The first thing is that there's a building constructed, and then the second item is the shadow, or what they call the reflection. Alright, and apparently this is all controlled by whether your current mouse location is above or below this line here, which has a Y value of 250. All these Y values are 250. Alright, so with that I think we could look at the code and make some progress. So first, I always like to scroll up to make sure that there's nothing to do up here. And on line 17 is my on mouse press, and I'm sending the current value of the mouse into whatever I do here. So I think at a top level view of this, what's really happening is a conditional action, which is going to require an if statement. So if I click anywhere up here, I'm going to draw these things. Now, when I say draw those things, what we mean is we're going to call the two functions, draw building and draw reflection. So all we need to do is understand what are we sending in. And that part is actually easy. These are just the mouse X and mouse Y, and this is mouse X. And that's it. So this is a very simple program. So we need an if statement here. And what we're testing is if we're above or below that 250 line. So remember, above means Y values are less than. So if we're less than 250, then we're going to execute those two functions. We don't need an else statement here because if it's above the 250 mark, in other words, if we're lower on the screen when the Y value is more than 250, we don't do anything. So there is no need for an else statement. So the two things we do here are call the functions. I'll just say draw building. That's the name of the function. And we need to send in now the two parameters, and that's just mouse X and mouse Y. And then the second thing we do is we draw the reflection. And that needs the X value. That's it. So let's give this a shot. Click, 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 and we pass the test. In the next exercise, we're going to need an if statement along with an else, because we have one of two actions to complete here. So on the screen, if I click my mouse anywhere on the right side of the screen, I get a step sort of stamped at that point. Anywhere I click, it's a red footstep. And if I click on the right, same idea, we got a black footstep. So there's only one function here. It's called, I'll bet it's called draw footstep. There it is, right? And it's going to need 3 bits of information. It's going to ask you, all right, where do you want me to draw this thing? And what color do you want it to be? So if you're on the left side of the middle, in other words, if you're to the left of 200, right, if you're on the black side, then you're going to send in the word black here. If you're on the red side, you're going to send in the word red. X and Y are just the current location of the mouse, mouse X and mouse Y. That's it. So the top level of this code is if something is true, then we're going to do some things. Otherwise, we're going to do some other things. So whatever is indented below the if statement is what will happen. if that test is false, or true. So what do we want to happen? Well, first we can make the condition. So if we're to the left of the center line, then we're going to really test if the current mouse X is less than, say, I think it was 200. Then we will call the draw footstep function. And we send in order, mouse X, then mouse Y. Now we already know what mouse X and mouse Y are because, remember, we're inside of the mouse press function right now. So wherever you click the mouse, the current XY values are stored there, and we're just now sending them along to another function. And then the third bit of information we'll need is the color. If we're on the left, we're going to make it black. Now we can actually copy paste this whole line here because it's the exact same thing we're going to do on the else, except all we have to do is change the color. From black to red. Now notice we don't need to have another test. Students often do this. I'm going to make this a comment, right? Because this is not correct code. But what students often do is they'll say something like, if mouse X is less than 200, do this. And then they'll say, totally separate if statement, if mouse X is greater than 200, instead of an else. This is a bad programming style. We really want to use the if-else structure because it forces us to think in terms of binary decisions. Do A or B, one or the other, not both. Also, what's more unique about the else structure is this. And please listen carefully. This is a pretty important idea. So when Python sees this if statement, if this statement is true, it'll execute this line. If it's not true, then it'll automatically execute the else block. But the reverse is also true. If we are on the left side of the screen and we click the mouse, this will happen. The computer will completely bypass the else and all of its statement underneath it because it will never run them. It's only ever going to run either the if block or the else block, never both. If we did this the other way and made a second if statement, yes, it will technically work because it's still either going to be less than or greater than 200, but it's really bad programming style. All right, let's run this and give it a test. I think we're good. Uh-oh, what do we do? Okay, so there's my color blindness coming into play. I see red, and they said it was brown. Maybe just on my screen. Browns and blacks. All right, I'll do one more with you. This one's going to be the flower collection. Now, I think you saw this something similar earlier, but in this exercise, we're just going to extend the idea. So I'll click on that and just click around here. So first I'm going to start clicking up above here. So I get what seems to be looks like a flower. Now break it down. What's a flower? It looks like it's a circle on top of a star. And then we have a thick green line from that location down to this guy right here. Looks like it's the point 200, 300. Let's do it again. There's another flower and the line. Another flower and the line. So when we draw flowers and stars, we just need the center location, which is mouse X and mouse Y. But same thing, when we draw the line, it's from that same mouse X and mouse Y as our starting point, and then always going down to the same ending point, 200, 300. All right, we know how to draw stars and lines. But there's a little bit more to this program. Let me just keep clicking around because it says the top half of the canvas does one thing, and the bottom half of the canvas does something else or something in addition. So when we mean the bottom half, maybe like that. Okay. Bottom half meaning, I presume, over 200, right? So there's one at 201. So what's going on here? Draw one over here. It looks like before we draw the flower, we're going to draw another star that's green, and we're going to call that a leaf, right? So some flowers have leaves and some don't. All right, so that's the visual here. Let's make a plan for this program before we start coding it. So if I click anywhere up in the upper part of the screen, the sequence should be step 1, draw a star using that center, 108, 132. Draw a circle with that radius of 6. I'm sorry, radius of 9. The star has a radius of 25 with 6 points, and you see the gradient there for the, I believe that's the center part. All right, so it's easy to draw a star and a circle, and then the other thing we'll have to do is draw a line. No problem. So draw a star, a circle, and then the line. Now in that order. The order is important here, because if you change the order, if you draw the line first, then actually if you draw the line last, then it would lie on top of this, and you would see the line extending from right there to right there. So think about the order of the commands appear in is the order that they will show on the screen, and we know that as things overlap one another, order determines what you see and what you don't. So now what's different is if I click down here, I'm going to, in addition to everything we just talked about, throw a green leaf there even in the furthest background of the star. In other words, draw the leaf first, then the star, then the circle, but probably the line was the very first thing. So the difference between the upper part and the lower part is just question, do we draw a leaf or not? But no matter where you click, you're always going to draw the flower and the stem, and depending on where you click, maybe you'll draw the leaf first or not. So let's go coding. So here we are in the flower collection starter code, and they draw the vase for us, and here's the functions to draw the leaf and to draw the flower. So the flower includes all of the code in the correct order, first the line, then the star, and then the circle. We don't have to mess with any of that. All we do is send in where are we starting from, right? And we always end up with the line at that same place, 200, 300. That's right here at the top of the vase. So the only code we need to mess with is the mouse press. So what do you want to happen when you press the mouse? Out of the starting gate, it just draws flowers, no matter where you are. Now you recognize that there's an error here, right? Because we're not drawing the leaves yet. All of these flowers have no leaves. That's kind of pretty. So what we want to happen is if you're anywhere beneath this 200 line, so in other words, if the current mouse Y is greater than 200, then we want to go ahead and draw the leaf first. And we're going to send in mouse X and mouse Y. But what's important here is that the draw flower method does not go into the if statement. We want this to always happen when you click the mouse. We want this to happen only sometimes. So right now we're below the 200 mark. We're getting the leaves, but as soon as we get above the 200 line, no leaves.